allegory through astrological divination. Today's story is about a brazen young woman who boasts she owns police and legal authorities through family ties and powerful affairs, builds a false image of credibility by filing fraudulent reports accusing an innocent man of theft, hacking, insanity, and abuse while she secretly steals his identity, drains his accounts, opens loans in his name, and even diverts his mail to keep him unaware. She tightens control through coercion and terror, threatening his children's safety until fear forces his compliance, convinced her network makes the threats real. What she doesn't know is that the man is a high-level government asset operating under a clandestine protocol with a prototype quantum surveillance program that he helped create. Project Steal, using his low-profile cover job while quietly mapping corruption across institutions and building ironclad cases against predatory conspiracies. When the takedown finally hits, the roundup becomes national news, and she is exposed as a central figure in trafficking, racketeering, laundering, device violations, cybercrime, and coordinated abuse, with an additional homicide link surfacing after one of her own former hacking allies flips and hands investigators the final evidence that collapses her entire myth of untouchability after finding an old video of her being rather inappropriate with a dog on one of her target's devices. Today's story is called Octagon of Steel. She called herself untouchable. But in the back of the booth at private clubs where CEOs went to forget their wedding rings, Delilah would lift her glass and smile like a verdict. I own the police, she'd purr. I own the courts. I own whoever signs paper. Then she'd laugh because for a long time it looked true. And it did, because people did comply and do as she said they would. Crazy how that worked. Judge would return her calls. A captain's cruiser appeared whenever she snapped her fingers. Complaints just seemingly vanished. Reports rewrote themselves. And when she pointed at a man and said, "Monster," the system echoed her. The man's name was Michael. Quiet, tired-eyed, methodical. On paper, he was everything Delilah said. Thief, abuser, hacker, criminally unstable. In reality, he was being buried alive in paperwork. She filed false reports accusing him of financial crimes while draining his accounts, claiming he was stalking her while diverting his mail through old postal connections so he wouldn't see the loans that she had opened in his name. She poisoned his credibility first, then his life. Every time he tried to resist, a new rumor arrived like a knife. He's insane. He's violent. He's on drugs. She knew how to build a case out of air with the Moon and Scorpio instincts sharpened into a weapon. Then she found a soft spot, his kids. She never said it plainly. She didn't need to. It was always a warning, a casual mention of school routes, a remark about how easy it was for the children to disappear in a city full of blind eyes. It turned Michael's choices into an equation with one solution. Comply, stay quiet, and don't fight back. Under the sky's pressure, Moon sextile Mars in the 5th, fear ignited into protective fury he couldn't release. Under the Moon square Jupiter in the 6th, his daily life became a grinding machine of stress, paperwork, and watchful paranoia. And under the Moon square Pluto in the 10th, the public story about him grew darker than the truth, swallowing his reputation like a grave. Delilah adored the power of that. She believed she had mastered the world because she understood one rule and one rule alone. People obey what they fear. What she didn't understand was Michael's silence wasn't surrender. It was cover. Michael wasn't just a nurse picking up extra shifts, blending into hospital corridors with a badge and tired hands. He was also the kind of executive who appeared at facilities nobody expected. Quiet audits, quiet questions, quiet corrections. He'd walk into a failing system and find a flaw beneath the flaw, the rot beneath the policy. He was the man governments used when corruption hid behind procedure or company policies. He belonged to a classified special project so compartmentalized it didn't officially exist. Project Steal. And it's live. It wasn't just surveillance. It was pattern trapping, probability mapping, metadata reconstruction, human network geometry, if you will. Michael helped design its core method, an octangular architecture. 8-sided logic, gates that treated conspiracies like shapes rather than stories. The Octagon was stability under pressure, a cage made of angles. You could watch one liar, you can watch 10. But an Octagon let you watch the space between them, the relationships, the handoffs, the timing, the coordinated motion that always betrayed the truth. Delilah's network didn't look like a straight line to Michael. Looked like an octagon. 8 points, 8 roles, 8 rotating favors. A cop, a clerk, a landlord, a banker, a fixer, a friend, a CEO, and Delilah at the center smiling like a sun. Michael's team didn't need her confession. They needed her certainty. They needed her to keep pushing, keep filing, keep coercing, keep recruiting accomplices, keep leaving digital fingerprints everywhere while she believed she was protected. Could you imagine being that stupid? That was the real trap. The night the first crack appeared, Delilah was at home, scrolling through a private group chat, an encrypted thread, something like WhatsApp, where her circle joked about handling Michael. She felt the Sagittarius stellium, Sun, Venus, Mercury like gasoline, confidence, charm, speed. She fired off a message and watched the reactions bloom. She fed off the attention. She loved being the axis people revolved around. Then her screen flickered. Not a glitch, something colder. A symbol appeared for just a half a second. An octagon, thin-lined, precise like a seal, pressed into the glass. Her stomach dropped. She told herself it was nothing. She drank. She texted a captain. She texted a judge. She texted 2 married executives who'd always answered before. One didn't respond, though. Then another. Then her friend in the department replied with a single word. Careful. The fear that gripped her wasn't fear of Michael. It was fear of something bigger than her. Because at the edge of her empire, a hacker she'd once used, an arrogant ghost with quick hands, had started asking questions. He'd been her knife in the dark, the one who cracked phones and accounts and helped smear victims with evidence. Illegally using military-grade software weaponized against who they thought was a regular civilian. But he'd found things in Delilah's private archives that weren't just criminal, they were absolutely revolting, like disgusting, incestuous, bestiality, pedophilia level, like disgusting things. Proof of exploitation, proof of blackmail, proof of cruelty, proof she kept because she enjoyed the power of it. Proof of cruelty to animals and children. He realized she didn't just break rules, she enjoyed breaking living things. So he flipped. Not out of morality, out of survival. He delivered a data dump to a secure channel thinking he was bargaining for his future. He didn't even know he was already speaking to the Steel team. And when Michael reviewed what came in, his face didn't change. Already seen it, he knew. Only the air around him did. North Node, Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces. The grim hand of karma itself. The dissolving of illusions and the ocean swallowing the lie. Delilah's empire started collapsing in ways she couldn't fight. Her random loan approvals were flagged across states. Her routine mail diversions became a pattern of fraud. Her false police reports were matched to exact dates funds disappeared. Her network's encrypted calls, VoIP systems, her VoIP threads, burner rotations were reconstructed through timing signatures, the way a shadow reveals the shape of a hand casting it. Then the haunting began. Not ghosts. Something worse. Probably some asshole throwing stuff out there in a very clever manner. Speaking on things that make a lot of sense. At that point it probably would be too late if that is the case. And that is his integral role in this whole thing. It wasn't ghosts, it was even worse. It was consequences. Judge's calendar leaked. Captain's hidden payments surfaced. A landlord's access log appeared, showing unlawful entries like a heartbeat on paper. A CEO's wife filed for divorce the same day subpoenas arrived. A private club security footage was seized, faces frozen mid-laugh, mid-toast, mid-brag. Delilah tried to regain control the only way she knew. Escalation. She doubled down on the narrative, pushed harder to paint Michael as deranged and dangerous. She urged her circle to finish it. She wanted an ending that kept her clean. Something that looked self-inflicted, something the public could swallow. But Michael wasn't just enduring anymore. He was moving. Action began like a storm at the edge of the city. Quiet teams, quiet warrants, quiet raids, executed before sunrise. Steel didn't hit one house. It hit the Octagon. 8 points at once. They didn't arrest one corrupt official. They removed the structure holding the lie upright. The city woke up and found its untouchables sitting in handcuffs. Delilah panicked. She called everyone. She threatened everyone. She pleaded, tried to seduce. She screamed. She promised money. She promised silence. She promised sex. She promised revenge. Then she heard it over a dead line, a click in the static. A voice, calm as a sealed door. "Oh, Delilah," the agent said. "Your calls are being recorded and have been for years." Her throat went dry. She fled to one last safe place, the private club, believing the old gods of influence would still protect her. The club was empty. Tables were cleared. Cameras were removed. The bartender was gone. Even the mirrors looked different, as if the room itself wanted to forget her. Outside, blue and red lights painted the night like a verdict. She tried running. And in that run, she understood the final cruelty. She had never owned the police. She had only rented corrupted fragments of them, temporary, terrified men who folded the instant something real arrived. When Delilah was finally taken down, it wasn't a dramatic confession. It was an avalanche of evidence, a landslide. National news, headlines calling her what she tried to make Michael: predator, fraud, trafficker, racketeer, her face everywhere. Her voice on recordings, her messages displayed as exhibits, her power reduced to a case file. Michael sat through the hearing like a man watching an equation solve itself. He didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He simply waited for the last line to close. And when the judge read the final charges, when the Octagon snapped shut and then the lie collapsed, Delilah turned, wild-eyed, searching the courtroom for someone to blame. Michael met her stare once, Moon and Scorpio, unflinching. Then he looked away, not because he feared her, but because she no longer mattered. Project Steel had done what it was designed to do, turned a predator's certainty into a weapon that ends them. And in the aftermath, when the city tried to understand how a nurse could dismantle an empire, Michael didn't explain the geometry, the classified methods, or the way the Octagon traps a conspiracy by watching the spaces between. He only said one thing, quiet enough to feel like a spell. Truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be recorded. And somewhere, far beneath the courtroom, the Octagon held. With that being said, we're going to end this with the invocation of the Octagon and the collapsing wave. In the name of the observer and the law that nothing hides, hidden remains unmeasured, I call the field to coherence and the truth to form. By the Octagon to steel 8 angles of stability, 8 gates of evidence. I set the geometry of reckoning, 4 corners to anchor, 4 corners to cut, a perfect cage for every rotating lie. Let each verdict become a witness. Let each edge become a boundary. Let the space between them reveal the network that thought it had no shape. By quantum law, what exists in darkness still exists in the field. What is entangled cannot pretend it stands alone. What is measured must collapse in one reality. I summoned a wave function of deception, superposed stories, shifting masks, manufactured innocence, and I command it now collapse. collapse into the single timeline where truth stands, where receipts align, where every false report returns to its author, where every stolen name finds its thief. Let the probabilities to protect corruption decay. Let the noise and the manipulation become signal. Let every encrypted whisper leave a shadow in the math. Let every proxy, call, and covert handoff be mapped into lattice. 8 angles, 8 truths, axis, motive, method, money, message, movement, witness, consequence. So the Octagon closes without mercy and without mistake. As particles choose a state when observed, so shall every liar choose a consequence when seen. Project Steel, awaken! Pattern reveal. Network bind. Justice arrive. So the geometry holds, so the wave collapses, so the empire falls. When the Octagon closes, the wave collapses. Truth becomes the only state. Let this now be law of law, and so it is. That's all I have for you guys today.